Hey, Phil.
Yeah.
Can you grab my wallet for me?
Yeah, hold on. Which one is it?
This one that says bad motherfucker.
Hello and welcome to the Nerd Card. I'm Phil.
I'm Chuck.
I'm Esteban.
And today, doing something a little different.
Yeah, a
We're
little
doing
non-canon.
Non-canon nerd. It's non-nerdy things that we still nerd out about.
Yeah, it's still kind of nerdy, but it's not nerdy, but it kind of is.
But kinda, but not, but kinda.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can dig that. And our topic today is the classic film, Pulp Fiction.
Hell yes. One of the best movies
Oh, yeah.
ever made. Really, it is. It's from director Quentin Tarantino, who's made nothing but good films, in my opinion. And for me, this is his best. This is his second movie. And in my opinion, it's his best film.
Yeah, well, it's one of those movies that, I mean, you just have to see this movie before you die.
Yeah.
I mean, it's seriously,
No,
though. I mean, it's.
I agree.
It's an absolute classic. It's a perfect movie. It's so well written. It's so well directed. I mean, everything about it is awesome.
Well, it was the
great movie.
first time that I remember seeing a film that was nonlinear storytelling.
Sure, yeah.
I had never experienced that before, and I remember I saw this in the theater in 1994 when it came out. We were visiting my friend Mike at college. So, Mike, if you're watching this video, you probably remember. And we were out in Kalamazoo. Yeah, that's in Michigan for you guys who aren't in Michigan.
We got a lot of weird names here.
We do a lot of weird names. So we were out in Kalamazoo, and we decided with Mike and his friends to go, a couple of his friends, to go see Pulp Fiction. We had all wanted to see this movie. And, you know, you saw previews, but didn't really know what to expect. And you go in this movie, and I have an English degree. I was an English major at the time. And so a pulp novel is something I was familiar with, right?
Sure.
I had read The Maltese Falcon, which is like the quintessential pulp novel. And so I was interested in the whole idea. And, you know, and this movie starts out with a definition of pulp, right? Of what it is, referring to the genre. So Tarantino's telling you right in the beginning of what you're going to get. And he starts right out and does this non-linear style that it was at first you're kind of like, what is going on? But, you know...
Well, it's that style. It's coined an industry term. To Tarantino something is to do something out of order.
Right.
I mean, it's incredible.
And it's the first time I saw it, and it was brilliant for the way this story was told, because like a good piece of artwork, it ends where it starts. Right? It brings you full circle.
Really does, yeah.
You know, it starts, speaking of where it starts with Honey Bunny and Ringo in the diner.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an interesting tidbit there, too. That scene is done. We see that scene, or rather the end of that scene, a couple of times in the movie. The second time we see it, it's not the same as the first time.
No, the speech is different.
It's different.
And when it starts in the film, her lips stop moving before the phrase is ended, because it goes into the musical part of the opening, the
right,
you know, part of
The Dickie Dale guitars. Yeah,
there you go. Thank you, because my isn't great. But it starts with her. You hear her words, but it freeze frames. Is what I was searching for.
Yep.
On them, and Phil's exactly right. And the one when she says at the end is slightly different than it is when it's in the very beginning. You know, I noticed that the first time I saw it, probably not, but I've seen this movie over 30 times easily.
Yeah,
over the years,
been quite a few times.
And it's one of those movies that it's the reason you can watch it that many times is entertaining. Every single time, the pace is great through this nonlinear style.
It is, and
starting off in this diner really sets the tone and the pace for the whole film.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the speech that the profanity laden, inappropriate speech that Tim Roth gives about why they want to rob a diner.
Yeah,
it starts just the brilliant writing, right? And
it does. You
go through this part, and I know Tim Roth was Tarantino's choice for this part. Wasn't the studio's choice, but it's Tarantino's.
Well, you know, studios are always going to throw
Tarantino,
something.
There's a lot of interviews out there with Quentin Tarantino you can watch, and there's one in particular out there. Tom Segura interviewed him on his channel, on his podcast channel, interviewed Quentin Tarantino, and Tarantino said in this interview, he says that he had a list, because you can find this list on the internet, and if I find it, I'll pop it up here while we're talking about it.
It's on IMDb.
But he's got a list of names that he wanted to cast for the part, and he's got all the people that he wanted, and his agent had said, well, do this. Put everyone that you want on the list, including the people the studio want, and get that list approved by the studio. Then when you cast who you want to cast, they can't complain because they approved the list. So that's what he did. Because most of the parts that he wanted the people for, they had a different choice. The studio did.
Right.
But Quentin got to cast who he wanted because they approved this list.
And that's brilliant.
It is
first
brilliant.
of all. But the cast is really what makes this movie so damn good.
Oh, yeah.
The initial budget for Pulp Fiction was $8 million. 5 of that was to pay the cast.
Yeah.
The other $3 million was to actually shoot the movie.
I think Bruce Willis took most of that too, didn't he?
I assume he did, yeah.
And he took his third choice role too, right? He wanted Jules, and Tarantino told him, "Well, no, I wrote that for a black actor, right? It's written to be a black person."
Yeah.
And then he said, "Okay, well, how about Vincent Vega?" He's like, "No, that was for Travolta." Tarantino was very vocal that was for John Travolta.
Yeah.
Because he saw him as a star not getting his due in Hollywood, and he wanted to really put him in that kind of a role.
Well, and this is the role that brought him back.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
So then Tarantino told Bruce Willis, well, how about Butch? And he's kind of, I don't know. And ultimately, Bruce Willis called him up and said, yeah, let's do it. I'll do Butch.
And it was Harvey Keitel that actually talked him into it because he knew Bruce was a fan of Reservoir Dogs. Said, look, man, just do it. You're going to work with Tarantino, man. Do it. It's going to be
why
great
would you not? He's a brilliant director. He's a brilliant filmmaking mind.
Yeah.
He's a brilliant person. His dialogue is unmatched. No one writes better dialogue than Quentin Tarantino. I don't care what anyone says. In my humble opinion, he's the best dialogue writer that ever lived.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And it shines through in this movie, from that first part. And then when we break into the second part, the dialogue, right, when I'm calling the second part is Jules and Travolta, Jules and Vincent in the car driving. And he does a transition with the music from the music that's playing in the beginning scene at the end when Honey Bunny gives her speech, and then you hear a radio switch change, right? You kids today don't know what that is. On a dial on an old car, the FM station changed that sound
Over
that it
to
goes
Cool
to
and the Gang.
right to the song, and then you hear the song that's Jungle Boogie, I think, is playing.
Yep.
While they're driving in the car, and Vincent Vega has just gotten back from Europe, and he's telling Jules about all the little differences between the U.S.
It's the little differences.
Right. So one of the big ones, the one that everyone quotes, there's two big ones. One, you can go into a theater and get a glass of beer, and I'm not talking a paper cup. I'm talking a glass of beer, which you can do now.
Yeah, that's
right. 1994, kids.
That
you weren't
happening.
going to Showcase Cinemas for those of you in Michigan and getting a glass of beer in your movie theater. One happened.
No.
Right. Now we have Imagine in Michigan and other stations. If you're in
and
Arizona,
AMC
Star
does
Theaters,
that, and
AMC, right? Different places I lived, I've been able to do it in every state I've been in.
Sure.
The other thing is the most famous is the Royale with cheese.
In fact, actually, speaking of Michigan, here in Detroit, Michigan, we have a restaurant called Royale with Cheese.
Yeah. And it's
so cool.
Such an impact in the culture of people of my generation who saw this film is that when I've gone to Germany, the group that I was with the first time we went to McDonald's specifically to get a Royale with cheese. Even though it's a quarter pounder, we wanted to say, yeah, I had Royale with cheese because of this movie.
Yeah.
Only because of this movie.
Well, it's certainly had a significant cultural impact.
Of course.
Another series that has a significant cultural impact would be the MCU, which, of course, Samuel L. Jackson has a big part in.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And in the MCU, within the MCU, Nick Fury's headstone has Ezekiel 25:17 on it.
Path of the Righteous Man.
All because of Pulp Fiction.
Right. Which,
I mean, how cool is that?
Which in this part where Jules and Vincent are driving to is to go see Brett.
Yeah.
And his crew. And they get into a conversation about foot rubs, which is kind of funny. Just talking, and again, it's the little details, and Tarantino loves to point that stuff out. The little details of, the significance of a foot rub, and Jules gets mad at him when he points it out, right? And
yes, he does.
When you get to where they're going to go see Brett, has that famous speech, Brett, are you familiar with the path of the righteous man? Which we've looked up, in the Bible, right? There's so many different, Esteban will chime in on this here, but it's not that full speech that you get in the movie. When I've looked in the Bible, I've never seen it.
It's not in there. About half of it's actually in there.
Yeah, a few lines. There are thousands of iterations of the Bible because of the way that the Greek language, the Aramaic language, and the Hebrew language are structured. They're more susceptible to different interpretation. So is it possible that Samuel L. Jackson's actual entire speech is in there? It might be in one of the versions. I haven't found it, but I haven't even scratched the surface. So.
Well, it's stated Tarantino and Samuel L. Jackson made up the first part and then took the second part.
Okay, that makes sense.
But even then, paraphrased. So it's yet another translation,
and that's okay by me because it really works.
It really works.
And this is a scene that, of course, has two parts again. Just like the first scene in the diner, this scene has two parts. You see them on this first time go through Brett, go through the speech. They open fire on Brett, and then it transitions to the next scene.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we'll come back to, it comes back to in the end. We'll get to that, but it comes back to this spot. Right.
Well, it's a very important moment.
Right. And we'll get to that in a minute. So the next scene that we cut to is called Vincent Vega and Marsellus Wallace's wife, not Mia Wallace.
No, Marcellus Wallace's wife. Yeah,
right.
Which is I think it's the longest or the biggest chunk of the movie.
I would agree.
Is that?
Yep.
Is very interesting.
Oh, super interesting.
Of course, the background behind that is Vincent Vega is going to take out Marcellus Wallace's wife, Mia Wallace.
Right. Taking the boss's wife out on a date is never a good idea.
It's not a date.
It's not a date. He does say that.
It's a date.
Well, it is, and that's because of the chemistry between the two of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But they end up at this place where Uma Thurman calls John Travolta a rectangle.
Right. Don't be a square.
Don't be
like
a
in the 50s, but she draws a rectangle.
But don't be a rectangle.
Right.
Yeah, Jackrabbit Slims.
Jackrabbit Slims, which is the large. Incidentally, a little bit of trivia: the largest piece of the budget was to build Jackrabbit Slims.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that place is, as Vincent Vega describes it, like a living wax museum with a pulse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool place. If that place actually existed, I'd probably go there. Like, it looks cool.
The closest you could get is probably Ed DeBevick's, but that doesn't exist anymore. So.
I've eaten at places in Los Angeles, and I don't remember what it was called. That had like a car was the
was the
restaurant. But and I've been at the burger joint on Sunset Boulevard and the train car and all that. But
I've been there.
The Jackrabbit Slims is I've never seen anything like that with a dance floor in the middle. And,
no, it's
which is of
different.
course all written because Tarantino wanted Travolta in that part because of course he was famous for his dancing Saturday Night Fever, and then have that in the movie was kind of an homage but hilarious at the same time when you're the audience, because audience at that time know who John Travolta was, doing that from before because he was one of these stars that, much like Robert Downey Jr., that was huge and then had this down peak and then back up,
upswing,
and this was that movie, as Phil said in the beginning, brought him back. But you have so many interesting 50s characters. I mean, Buddy Holly's the waitress played by Steve Buscemi.
Yeah.
Right, who's also in Reservoir Dogs.
Which is even funnier because in Reservoir Dogs, he plays
Mr. Pink, isn't it?
Yeah, he plays a character that does not tip.
Yeah.
In the next movie, he's a waiter.
Right. It's hilarious.
That's incredible.
Right? And Dean Martin, who seats them, right? Everyone thinks it's Martin Scorsese, and it's not. I thought it was Martin Scorsese, and it's not.
And it's not, yeah.
It's actually the actor who plays that was in a zombie movie, Day of the Dead, and has one of my all-time favorite lines in that movie. So it's very interesting to see that character playing Dean Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And just another small part in that's just pointing out at the pop culture, the retro that Tarantino loves, the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
100%, yeah.
When Uma Thurman's like, I don't know, there's so many Marilyn Monroes around here. And Vincent Vega's like, whoa.
Like, no.
There's only one Marilyn Monroe.
It's Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
That's Mimi Van Dorn and
Jane Mansfield
must have the night off.
Right. So, again, these are rife throughout this film of these different pulp culture references.
Yeah.
And as this night progresses on, not a date, is very clearly a date. Right.
There's a lot of tension.
There's a lot of tension because, of
yes.
course, one of the things in the earlier sequence that we didn't talk about, one of the small talk with the foot rub that we were talking about, that Jules gets pointed out by Vincent, is one of the Tony Rocky Horror gets thrown off a 4-foot building supposedly for rubbing Mia Wallace's feet.
Yes.
That comes up in conversation between Vincent Vega and Mia Wallace, and she's like, you're out of your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys are worse than a sewing circle, is what she tells them when they get the gossiping.
Right, well, you scamps get together.
Exactly. So as this film goes on, that chemistry builds, and again, you're seeing that, I think Esteban, you had said, what'd you say, in Another Life?
In Another Life, yeah, those two would have definitely hooked up.
Well, and
sure.
Had Mia Wallace not tried to snort his heroin,
that could have happened
they
that
certainly would have hooked up that night, I have no doubt.
Yeah.
Which then you bring us to when that happens, in one of the interludes in between, before he goes and meets Mia Wallace, he goes and stops by and sees the original Marty McFly.
Marty McFly,
yes. To get some heroin from Eric Stoltz.
Hey, McFly!
Which is one of the reasons a lot of people, this movie got criticism when it came out, showing this pervasive drug use, right?
Sure.
But it goes with the pulp nature of it. It goes in, Quentin actually Quentin actually wrote it more of as a comical kind of thing, because he's got this big dumb look on his face, driving. I mean, I've never taken it that way when I've watched it. But I guess that's what he had in mind.
Well, he had dark humor in mind,
right,
with the whole thing,
and it is.
There are very funny moments that are very dark.
Well, and we'll get to one of my favorite ones of that is, so they go through, and the part where he brings Mia back to Eric Stoltz's house because she's ODing. All rife with dark humor.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Right.
The whole scene is hysterical, but somebody's literally dying.
Right? And they have to do it. And when they stab her with the shot, right? And they're having an argument. What are you talking to me for? About getting the shot, and they're going back and forth. And it's just like this tense moment, but you're laughing. We could do this 3 times. No, he's just got standing motion. And they have an argument of who's going to do it. And he's like, no, when I bring an OD and go to your house, I'll do it. Otherwise, you do it.
Right.
It's just that all is hysterical, and then culminates with Mia Wallace just sitting straight up as soon as the adrenaline shot goes in.
If you're okay, say something.
This thing's sticking out, which then leads to the ultimate part of this that is just brilliant writing. He's dropping Mia Wallace back off at the house, and she's got this joke that she was supposed to do in her pilot that she wouldn't tell Vincent Vega at dinner because it's not funny.
Right.
And it's not funny.
It's not.
But when she tells it, the theater guffawed because it broke this tension that had built.
Nice use of the word guffawed, by the way.
Thank you. And it's a total horrible dad joke.
Yeah.
But everyone laughed their fool heads off because of the tension release from that joke that moment. And it's just some of the brilliance, again, of Tarantino's writing.
Yes.
That you get that.
It is indeed. So once that whole situation wraps up, the Vincent Vega and Marsellus Wallace's wife situation wraps up, that moves us on to perhaps one of the greatest movie monologues of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Delivered expertly by Mr. Christopher Walken.
Or cowbell, yeah.
Not that one, but yes. The Gold Watch speech.
Oh, it's brilliant.
He's a former POW who is delivering a gold watch to Butch.
Yep.
And just the whole speech. It's
the story behind the watch.
It's engaging.
Well,
it's hilarious. That cracked me up so much when he just offhand says, he had this watch up his ass. He died of dysentery, and then
for 8 years. Yeah.
Like, probably because he had a watch up his ass.
Probably. It had something to do with it.
That whole speech is just incredible, but that moves on to Butch getting into some serious crap.
Oh, yeah. So Butch, Punchy, as Vincent Vega likes to call him.
Palooka.
Yeah. Is a fighter on the downside of his career. And he decides to throw a fight for Marsellus Wallace, who is portrayed as basically the big gangster in the town of Los Angeles.
Right.
And so Butch takes money to take a fall in the third round? Fifth round.
Yep.
Marsellus Wallace gives him this great speech about fucking with you.
Yeah.
It's a great speech. And Butch takes the money and, of course, bets on himself and kills the other fighter.
Yes.
And is on the run from Marsellus Wallace.
Right. And the beginning of his run brings in a character. Now, as a side note, we talked about this prior and said every character in this is really well fleshed out. Even the side characters are not throwaway characters.
Right.
And a great example of that is the cab driver.
Yeah.
Maria
Villalobos.
Lobos.
Who is an intriguing character in her 2 minutes of screen time?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
That's what starts Butch running away. He's talking to this cab driver.
Butch. What does your name mean?
We're American, honey. Our names don't mean shit.
Exactly. I love it. It's so good.
It's really great. So that leads him back to his hotel where he's got his annoying little French girl.
Yes, who forgets the one thing that he wanted, which was his father's watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
On the
And
kangaroo.
he loses.
On the kangaroo, which looks nothing like a
Right.
kangaroo at all.
And he just
Anybody else
loses.
catch that?
He loses his mind, right? Because that's all he wanted was his watch.
Yeah.
And she got everything else but the watch. And she's like, no, I got it. And he was like, you sure? Oh, I did. Then I definitely did. Well, it ain't there.
Yeah, it ain't there.
So then he calms down and says, all right, go get something to eat and blah, blah, blah. And she doesn't want him to go because the gangsters will be looking for him. And she expects it'll be at the apartment, right? And so does Butch.
Yeah.
But Butch isn't going to let his father's watch not move on with him because he intends to give it on to his kid. So he gets to his apartment, and there you ultimately find Vincent Vega taking a dump.
Taking it up.
And you're kind of like, okay.
Which Vince does a lot throughout the movie, and every
Well,
time
at least,
he
at
does,
least twice, yeah.
every time he does, something bad happens.
One piece of advice, though, if you're going to stake out a guy to knock out, to terminate him,
Take your gun.
bring your Mac 10 into the bathroom with
Thank
you.
you.
Don't leave it on the countertop.
Leave it on the kitchen counter.
Yeah,
Right.
it's ridiculous.
Take
He
it
must
with
have really
you.
had to go.
Well, and so that's another clever little detail that Tarantino throws in there. One of the side effects of chronic heroin use is constipation.
Yes.
So that's why Vincent's always in the damn bathroom.
I mean, he is a habitual line stepper.
Yeah.
When it comes to with the heroin.
It's true.
Um,
It's true.
So Vincent gets whacked by Bruce Willis, his character Butch, who thinks he's done free and clear.
Yep.
And he's all in a good mood, listening to this cowboy music, drives up to the intersection, and there's Marcellus Wallace
Carrying a box of donuts.
carrying a box of donuts and looks at him,
Motherfucker.
hits the gas, runs him over, and then he's assisted by Kathy Griffin, played by Kathy Griffin.
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, yeah, credited as herself, or credited as Kathy Griffin.
Yep.
Very interesting. The other part of that's really interesting is Marcellus Wallace gets up, staggering, takes a shot, and hits whoever's assisting.
Hits a random
Bruce Willis.
person.
Some poor lady in the leg.
He's
Like,
clearly
Jesus.
he's clearly concussed, right? And he doesn't just trying to shoot at Butch. Butch is running away, which finds them into a resale shop, of which one of the more disturbing scenes in cinema occurs.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
That no one was ever prepared for. I remember seeing it in the theater, and you kind of had an idea what was going on, and you didn't really want to believe
well, and then it happened.
it. And then it happened. Which we won't go into great detail, because if you've seen this movie, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
A guy in a gimp and a leather suit, you're probably in for a bad day. But Butch breaks free.
Probably pretty fucking far from okay.
Pretty fucking far from okay. Interesting note I will say about that scene is originally Tarantino wanted to play when the music during that scene is playing the disturbingness. He wanted My Sharona, which the Knack declined.
I said, "Oh no,
Can't imagine why.
We're not doing that."
I mean, it would have been perfect.
But it's really cool because it leads to Bruce Willis wielding a samurai sword to.
Well, his selection of going through of weapons is epic, right?
Hilarious.
When he goes with the hammer, and
The
then he
hammer to
sees
baseball bat,
then the chainsaw,
chainsaw.
and then he sees the katana.
Yes.
I might have stuck with the chainsaw, but the
I'd have gone
katana is a
katana.
great.
But
well,
chainsaws, they can stall out. They might not start.
that's true.
That katana, man, and that looks like it was supposed to be a real, like old school Japanese
Sure.
katana. That's a bad weapon,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and he wields it as such.
That he does. Takes care of quite a few bad people.
Oh, Zed's dead.
Zed's dead, baby.
I will say that Tarantino has a hard-on for the katana.
He does
Oh,
like
I got-
katanas. I mean,
yeah.
Kill Bill. I mean, the
Yes.
whole movie.
One inch.
The whole thing is
Yes.
and serenading by Chuck.
Absolutely.
Lovely.
So he frees Marcellus Wallace and gains his freedom, but loses his LA privileges.
Fair trade.
Fair trade.
I would take
trade.
that, especially given what LA just did to him.
Absolutely.
Or attempted to do. To
Wasn't a fun day.
No, not at all.
You know, and that Zed was not going to have a fun rest of his life, as Marsellus Wallace tells us.
Short ass life,
yeah.
as he says.
Pair of pliers and a blowtorch.
Yeah.
But the nice thing there, Bruce Willis, Butch ends up with a chopper.
Who's Chopper, baby?
Zed.
Zed's dead.
Zed's
So
dead.
Bruce Willis rides off into the sunset with his girlfriend. And then we come round all the way back to Jules and Vincent, which you
Yes.
see them and you're kind of like, wait, he's dead.
Right. Didn't he
But
just
again,
die?
the nonlinear storytelling, that's not where it ends in the story, but it's where it ends in the movie.
Right.
And you see Vincent and Jules once more. Right after you go through again the scene with Brett.
Yeah. Well,
Which-
and Jerry Seinfeld hiding in the
Jerry
bathroom.
Seinfeld hiding in the bathroom. The guy looks just like Jerry Seinfeld.
He does.
And another kind of snafu in this movie is there's two kind of associated with this. So the first one is the bullet holes behind them are already in the scene where they weren't supposed to be.
Yes. Before they're shot at.
Before they're shot at. Because after you see them being shot at, clearly their position based on where Jules and Vincent were, they would have gone through them, which is why Jules is calling it a miracle.
Exactly.
But they're there before Jerry Seinfeld decides to fire off the gun.
yeah.
And then this is also where you see, once they go through that part, the Band-Aid, but we'll get to that, but there's also a Band-Aid in the back of Ving Rhames' neck having to do with this briefcase. But they go through, and as they're driving, because they had a man on the inside played by, what's the gentleman's name?
Phil Lamar?
Phil Lamar.
Phil Lamar,
The
yes.
man on the inside.
That's their guy. That's Jules and Vince's guy. He works for Marsellus Wallace. It was on the inside of Brett's crew.
I didn't get that either.
I didn't get
Yeah.
that in the movie.
Marvin?
Yeah, I thought he was their prisoner.
No,
That's why
he
he
was.
shot him in the face.
No,
well,
he-
it's not why he shot him in
No,
the face.
Marvin was on the inside. Vincent says to Jules, so you get a guy on the inside? Yeah, how many people? I don't know. 3, 4, 5.
Oh.
That's his guy.
You know how many times I've seen that movie and
Thank
didn't
you.
know that?
You learn something new every day. There you go.
Oh,
You're
thank
welcome.
you, Chuck.
That's huge.
Yeah. So they're bringing back Marvin. Marvin's in the back seat, and then Vincent has the gun kind of pointed at him haphazardly over a bump. Boom, blows his head off.
Blows his head in a shocking scene. When that happened the first
you're
time,
not
I was like,
expecting that.
"Oh!"
Poor Marvin.
Poor Marvin. I accidentally shot Marvin in the face. And so that they have to go and get to a friendly place, which leads us to Quentin Tarantino, his character's house. I forget his name off the top of my head.
Jimmy.
Jimmy.
Thank you.
Jimmy accepts them to clean the car and is none too happy about what he finds. And his wife's not going to be happy about it. The
Right.
bonding situation is part of the film is
Bonnie
called.
situation.
And so Jules has to make a call to Marsellus Wallace, who does exactly what he's asking for and makes him happy, and sends the wolf.
The wolf.
Harvey
What a great
Keitel.
character.
Oh, yeah, he's phenomenal.
What a great character. He's a fixer, basically. He goes in and fixes situations. But he is perfectly cool and calm in every situation.
Cool as a cucumber.
And just, masterfully takes it over.
A little please would be nice.
Pretty
please.
With
With
sugar on top. Clean the fucking car.
Exactly.
So great.
So it's very well done. They get in that situation, and Harvey Keitel has a small but important role, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And plays it masterfully as Vincent Wolf, who thinks fast and drives fast. And they go and he helps them dispose of the body.
Yeah.
And which then leads us back to, you see them in their T-shirts, and Jimmy, they look like dorks, but they're Jimmy's. They're your clothes,
Your
motherfucker.
clothes.
And
So great.
We end up back at the diner where we started, that we didn't know that Jules and Vincent were in there when we start the film.
No.
But Jules and Vincent are having breakfast, and you hear Honey Bunny and Vincent stand up and give the speech again that any of you pricks move, I'll execute every last motherfucking one of you.
Yeah.
And
All while Vince, once again, is in the
taking a
bathroom.
dump. Yeah.
Happens every time. Neil Wallace ODs while he's in the bathroom.
Yep.
He is shot on the shitter, and then this robbery takes place, of course, as well.
They're coming around to take everyone's wallets. Of course, Jules offers up his bad motherfucker and brings in Ringo. And as we go through, and if you've seen the film, they go through all the different things, and Vincent comes out and, says he's going to kill him if he gives him $1,500 on principal, and Honey Bunny's losing her mind.
Shut the fuck
You ain't going to do a
up.
goddamn thing. After he already told her we're going to a bunch of cool little, like Fonzie's correct him.
Fonzies,
Three
yes.
Fonzies, three little Fonzies.
Which brings us back to, again, the case. And the code is 666, and he opens it up.
Yeah.
And there's every time they open this case in this film, you hear this LFE. You feel this LFE,
Sure.
low frequency emission. For you guys who haven't watched before,
It's like a low rumble. Yeah.
which gives it gravitas, right? And you have this implication that it's a soul, that it's Marsellus Wallace's soul, especially with the fact that he's got the Band-Aid on the back of the neck, which is urban legend for how the devil would extract your soul if you sold your soul to the devil.
Sure.
Now, none of this was intended by Tarantino or
No,
Avery, the other writer.
Ving Rhames just nicked himself shaving, and Tarantino liked it. So
But
he
he
said,
kept
put the
it.
Band-Aid on.
And you knew he kept it because there's multiple days where
Oh,
they would
yeah.
have filmed his scenes. So it's a little piece they got added that may have not been the intention when they wrote it, but they sure knew the implication and ran with it.
It's the implication. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So it could be a bunch of different things. Tarantino wrote it admittedly just as a plot device.
MacGuffin, yeah.
Right.
And his official response is, it's whatever the viewer thinks it is.
Right.
Which is great.
I've always favored the theory of the soul because it lines up.
It makes a lot of sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And that's the one I tend to kind of roll with.
Sure. I can roll with that
But
too. I think it makes sense.
Like a beautiful piece of art, this movie ends where it started.
Yep.
And one important thing that Esteban pointed out, you want to go ahead with that part. In the beginning, Vince is the traveler.
Right, he's
Sure.
a traveler. So in the beginning, they're going through Vincent's travels to Europe.
Yep.
I've been to Amsterdam, this,
Yep.
that, and the other. Well, Jules has evidently never been anywhere. And he's he's really interested
Yep.
in Vinny's travels, and he's just asking about the different things. And by the end of the film, now he's the traveler.
Yeah, he's going to walk the earth.
He's going to walk the earth.
wherever God takes him.
And Vinny thinks he's a bum.
Right, for doing it. But that's just what he's been doing.
Right.
Yeah, it's exactly what he's been doing.
And then the movie ends. And it's a brilliant film.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Absolutely is. Final thoughts, gentlemen. Anything else?
Nope.
One of the best movies ever made.
Yeah, I
That's all
agree.
I'm
Hands
gonna say.
down.
It is. It's one of the best.
And if you haven't seen it,
Yeah.
do yourself a favor, go see it.
I agree entirely. With that, we'll go ahead and remind you to check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. We are out there. Remember, the likes are free.
Right there.
And share us with all your nerd and non-nerd friends so they can join in the party as well. With that, we'll say,
What's on your
nerd
card?
card?